Every year, Unity World Headquarters publishes a booklet that is centered on the season of Advent and on Christmas and the 12 days of Christmas that follow. And the booklet offers articles and daily readings that are focused on just providing us with some inspiration, spiritual practices, words of prayer to help us prepare for and then create the most meaningful holiday season as possible. And in this year's booklet, Unity CEO Jim Blake wrote an article that he began with acknowledging the difficult year that this has been. And it stood to reason then that perhaps Christmas may be difficult for people as well. The pandemic alone, just the pandemic alone, has taken its toll on all of us in different ways, and some in the same ways as individuals. And then we can also just look out and see the toll that is taken on our family and our friends and loved ones in our communities. We can look out and see it stretching all across our country. We can look up and see that it is stretching all around the entire world. But at the same time, and without ignoring the pandemic at all, this Christmas may be seen by many as a chance to really just let go of and set aside the concerns and the anxieties and fear and fatigue that has been a part of many of our daily lives, and just set them aside long enough to rekindle some of that Christmas message that we know has so often shown up in our lives as the warmth and the generosity, the love and the connections of this season. And so Jim extended an invitation, and it was that we try our best to consider an image of what he referred to as the tapestry of the Christmas spirit, and to take that image and then just try to connect with one, at least one thread of that Christmas spirit. And those threads can be associated with things like, the warmth that we feel in our hearts as we recall all the memories of Christmases past, those times spent with our families and friends. Or maybe it's the memories that come back to us from our own childhood, remembering the excitement and the anticipation that we felt as Christmas Day came near. Perhaps there would be joys of thread, perhaps especially this year, from having shared your generosity with others. And of course, our religious traditions, our spiritual traditions often hold a special place in our memories in celebrating this holy season of the year. So the point of the imagery and the reflection was to help our Christmas spirits this year be filled with and then be expressed through us just one thing. And that one thing is hope. And hope is what I'd like to spend some time with this evening on this very holy night, to explore a little bit about what it is and how it is just the beginning. It is just the beginning, a catalyst for so much wonder that we cannot yet see to be released, to be revealed, to make itself known. A little bit ago, we heard the scriptural story of Jesus's birth. Every year, we look to that birth of long ago, and then we ask ourselves, what does it mean today? What does it mean for us tonight, right here today? And Meister Eckhart was a German theologian and philosopher during the 13th century, and he pondered this with these words. He said, "Here we are celebrating the eternal birth which God bore and bears unceasingly in eternity, because this same birth is now born in time, in human nature." He referred to St. Augustine, who said, "What does it avail me that this birth is always happening if it does not happen in me? That it should happen in me is what matters." One of the familiar phrases that we often hear about Jesus's birth is the one that offers that hope was born this night. And so in the context of that hope, the question for us tonight then becomes, how can I, How can you and I give birth? How can we give new life to the hope that is within us and then bring that new life of hope into the world? Well, first, let's understand a little bit about what hope is. From a unity perspective, one of the ways that we would describe or define hope is to say that it is the expectation of good in the future, something subject to time. And I think those words subject to time are really, really important. And I say that because of the different relationships hope has to time. For example, hope is very fast. It's very fast. It does not need a lot of time. It doesn't need a lot of effort to make itself known in us, to make itself known to us. Just think about the times. Call to mind a time where you can remember you were struggling in some way, or that you were having doubts or concerns about something that was going on in either in your own life or maybe in life as it was happening around you. And now think about the moment when someone offered you an encouraging word, or there was just a glimpse of a prospect for a positive change in a particular matter of concern. In that moment, were you not even just a little bit more hopeful for a better rest of your day, or perhaps a few better days ahead? Another relationship that hope has with time is that hope does not require that we know exactly what the future holds. We don't need to know exactly what the good thing of expectation is going to be, what form it's going to take, nor the exact time that it's going to arrive. Hope is much more about our changing our thoughts, our attitudes, our perspectives, such that we become more positive about life in general, about all the good that does exist if we just look up and open our eyes to see it. Hope motivates us to adopt new ways of being, new ways of acting, new ways of interacting, new ways of thinking and behaving. We exchange those worries and concerns for a greater willingness to live with a renewed mindset that we are always being guided to our greater good. And that good, whatever its form, will become known in the perfect time, when the time is right for it to do so. And one last way that hope relates to time is that hope is never wasted time. It is never wasted time to hope, because hope is something that comes forth from the heart. It comes from the depth of your soul. And therefore, it is something that is pure and pure to its core. And because of that, it will always bring with it that glimmer of possibility, of wonderful possibilities in life. And it does so even in the midst of all the darkness that may exist. So let's take a moment now and see how all of that was first offered to us over 2,000 years ago. Let's remember the hope that was present in all that led to the birth of Jesus. First, there is Mary. Mary, this young girl, very young girl, who gets a visit from an angel who offers a greeting about Mary being blessed by the Lord. And Mary has no idea what that means. She does not understand it, and she asks to know more. So when the angel explains it in more details that included Mary bearing a child, even though she was a virgin, Mary still doesn't understand that and asks, how could that even be possible? So in other words, Mary didn't get on board right away with what the angel was bringing to her. She had questions. She hesitated. She had doubts. She did not have understanding. But then, in the swiftness of one moment, a movement within her heart to which she had to have been aware, one that I'd like to think ignited the hope in her and an expectation of something good in that future. She said, "Let it be in me, as you say." Second, we can look to Joseph. Now imagine being in his shoes and Mary telling you what has happened and what's going to happen. Imagine how you would have felt hearing that the woman that you have not yet married and who is still a virgin is going to have a child. And you are still supposed to accept her as your wife. You are to accept and raise this child. And you are to accept the judgment that will surely come to you from all those in your town. Just accept all of this just like that. Well, just as Mary did, Joseph took a pause. The first thing he thought about was how to break off the engagement. And then he set that aside, and his next thought was, okay, well, I'll marry her, but then I'll find a way to quickly and quietly divorce her. But then, as it had been with Mary, an angel appears again, this time in a dream, and tells Joseph, don't worry about all that stuff. Don't be afraid of all that you're hearing. What is going on right now? It's all the workings of God. And Joseph let it be so. And he did so without knowing one thing about how the next day, let alone this future birth, how all of that was going to unfold and everything that they would encounter along the way. He did it from that place of hope, no matter what the future might hold. See, the hope in these two hearts was never close to being wasted. Quite the contrary. It carried them through a time in their lives and through the birth of a son who would usher in a new way of thinking, a new way of believing, a new way of being, that the time was right for the world to hear. A world where God would no longer be a God of fear and anger and vengeance, but it would be a presence of love. Where the guiding lights of life would no longer be power and greed and authority, but instead they would be kindness and generosity, diversity and inclusiveness, justice and forgiveness, and the oneness of humanity. A world where it would be realized that this very same presence of spirit and all of these divine attributes and more were not only in the baby Jesus, but in all of us as well. A world where it would be for each of us to bring that sacred presence into the world, bring it forth, as I said before, through our thoughts, our words, our actions, our behaviors. So that's the story of old. What about our story today? Where does any of that show up in practical ways today? I'm going to ask you to imagine again. This time, imagine you're minding your own business. Or maybe you are sleeping peacefully in your bed when you have a vision or you have a dream, when it tells you that you have been chosen to bring new hope into the world. Imagine that little to no details about what that means are offered. No clear understanding of why it's necessary or how it's going to happen or when is provided. Imagine receiving nothing more than an assurance that you are the one. I don't know how many of us would choose to accept that kind of invitation. But as it has been in so many ways, 2020 hasn't exactly followed the storylines of old. 2020 has blown past a whole lot of what we once called normal in so many different ways. So instead of an invitation offered in a vision or a dream by these beautiful angelic presences, we were provided with more of a directive, and one that didn't really offer us all that much of a choice. I don't think too many of us were prepared. Not too many of us were able to easily just on a dime make all of the changes and transitions in life and families and relationships and work careers that it demanded. And there were some who resisted it altogether. Now, in the beginning, it brought up a whole host of questions, a whole lot of not understanding. And that grew into fears and anxieties and stresses. So you might say that a little bit of Mary and Joseph showed up in us this year. And we know that they surrendered to their call. And they spent the next 9 months doing what was theirs to do, one step, one day at a time, in order to bring hope embodied in that infant child Jesus into the world so that he could do what was his to do. Now, this directive that we were given was one that announced, and states all around us were doing it as well. But it was a directive when our state announced that it would be going into its first official shutdown due to the pandemic of COVID-19. Would you like to take a guess as to when that shutdown was to begin? It began on March 24th, 2020. Exactly 9 months ago tonight. And tonight, I feel certain that a new world of hope is being born through you and through people all around this world. So if you are feeling a bit down this Christmas, if circumstances are just draining you of feeling any hope at all, or you'd just like to have the hope you do have get a little bit of a burst, then I'm going to encourage you to allow tonight to be one of looking back over the last 9 months. Allow yourself to remember all of the changes and the pivots and the transitions that you did make in your life. How you adjusted and how you adapted to things like maybe just cooking more often, working remotely, being a volunteer teacher for your children in your dining rooms and your kitchens, wearing a face mask, donating more of your financial prosperity to those who needed it more. How you have embraced virtual technology to attend church services, but not only that, but also meetings and classes and concerts and family reunions and fundraisers and all of these connections that were just simply too important to lose. How you found gems of joy in the quiet and the solitude, or perhaps learned new skills, or reignited a passion you had let fizzle out. How you saw just how really beautiful a sunset is, and perhaps always has been. How you moved more gracefully and with heightened awareness through the changing of the seasons as they transitioned one to the other, almost now bringing us full circle for a year cycle. I don't believe that any of this could have been done had hope not been present in you. That glimmer of light that just kept reigniting, just helped keep you going into the future one step, one day at a time, without always knowing what you would find or where you would end up, but knowing somehow deep down that it was going to be good. And now, 9 months later, after 9 months of nurturing and protecting and nourishing that seed of hope in you, some of that hope's expected good in the future, I believe, has very likely already made its way into the world tonight. Because maybe somebody out there has a brand new love of cooking, or new connections that would have been impossible to make had you not stepped into the virtual world. Or maybe your calendar has a bit more white space in it than it did before. Or maybe solitude is now a gift that you give to yourself a little bit each day. Or perhaps that new skill you learned or passion that you reignited opened up a brand new outlet for your creativity. Or maybe it's just through all of the ways that we've all been open to just open our eyes and see see hope moving and being expressed into being in so many different ways by so many different people near and far. As wonderful as all of that is and will continue to be, perhaps on this night, the most important expected good that our hope has brought forth is that which cannot be seen, but it can absolutely be felt. And that is a deeper knowing and a stronger willingness. A deeper knowing of how important it is year after year, how much it does matter year after year to celebrate the story of Jesus's birth and keeping all that it brought into this world at that time active and alive in you and me today. And then a stronger willingness to anchor your soul in hope such that the next time it calls, however and for whatever it calls, your answer easily comes forth. Let it be so in me. Let it be so through me. God bless you.